from Toastmasters.
Should I turn the lights off for you? Yeah.
Oh yeah, please. The reason I chose this subject was because I've been to several business meetings at Toastmasters, and we always do parliamentary procedures, and we've also done it in our club ourselves. So I kind of know how to do it, but I thought it would be good practice for me to actually go through the whole thing. And it all started when General Henry Roberts was in the Army, and he would go through to these meetings and these trainings. And then one day he was stationed in Wisconsin, and he was stuck there in the snow, so he decided to write all these Robert Rules of Orders. And then it became kind of like done in all different types of atmospheres in the military and business and in our corporate world. And I found that it's necessary because we have so many opinions and everything needs to be organized. And we know how that is in today's government. So what I'll do is I'll go through the basics of what the definitions are and the steps, and then we'll do a mock legislature. We're going to be a bunch of state assemblymen thinking about certain laws. So the first thing that came to mind was rent control. So we'll go through that and discuss that. Okay, so let me start. So parliamentary procedures and action. So parliamentary rules take into account the often conflicting interests that develop during meetings, and they provide procedures and ensure decisions are made fairly. I don't know if that's always true. So the basic definitions. Quorum. So we need a minimum amount of people to vote for a transaction or a law. The Constitution is an organization's fundamental governing principles. We have our Constitution here in the U.S. We have bylaws, standard rules governing an organization's internal affairs. Then we have standing rules, details concerning administration of organization. Motion, a formal proposal that an action be taken. Presiding officer, meeting leader to sees the rules are observed. Okay, so first one, a member will make a motion. Then another member seconds it, but that doesn't mean the member is agreeing to the motion. That just means that he agrees to us to discuss the motion. The presiding officer places the motion before the group. Then we debate about the motion on the pros and the cons. And then we put the motion to be voted upon. And the presiding officer announces results. Okay, so I thought it was interesting this year. I was listening on the radio that rent control was going to go into effect in California for all cities. And they also put a limit on how much you can raise your rent. It was a really small margin, inflation plus a small percentage. That's how much you can raise it for. So I won't tell you what I think about that. So we're going to discuss that. So does anybody have a motion?
I move that we allow rent control. this proposition.
Second.
Wait a second. Okay, so we have a member who proposed a motion of rent control. Another member says we can discuss this. So as presiding officer, I'm gonna have a motion that we discuss rent control for the whole state of California.
Well, I think we should have it.
Okay, so now the motion is open for debate. So all you renters out there, what do you think?
Yeah, I want rent control.
You want rent control?
Rent is very high in the Bay Area.
Does somebody else disagree or agree?
I'm a landlord and my property needs fixing up and it costs a lot of money to fix up a place, and if the rent is controlled and I don't get enough money, I'm not gonna be able to make repairs on my property.
That's a good point. Does somebody else have a idea?
Here's the thing that I think happens, and it's just human nature, is that when you tell me I can only increase the rent by this amount every year, I'm going to make sure that I increase it by that amount exactly every year. Whereas if I were not given that ultimatum, I might just, if I had a renter that I really liked that was taking good care of my place, I might not move the rent at all, as long as my mortgage and my insurance and my repairs are being met. You know, so I think that in one way it encourages people to take that percentage plus the cost of living every year, rather than, you know, leave it up to your own judgment.
Good point.
So you think,
So I think it might actually escalate rents, is what I'm saying.
oh, because you have inflation plus the price you can raise it to.
Yeah.
And it's already at such a high level right now, and if you had a good landlord, if you had a good tenant, I don't think you'd just automatically raise it because you can, you wouldn't, so.
I think it would depend on your situation, because like if it's just me and I'm an individual and I'm renting to an individual, maybe not. But if I'm a property management company,
Yeah.
you know,
Getting a percentage of how much rent they actually collect.
yeah,
So everything's a financial interest to have more dollars, right?
yeah.
That's how they kind of work.
Which I guess is
percentage-wise.
why they have the control on it in the first place, is because property management companies have a tendency to, you know, to want the absolute market value that they can get, the highest market value that they can get.
Well, that's also why you lock into a lease too, right?
That's
I mean,
true.
So
That's
if
true.
you got a good tenant that's going to stay there for a while, and you have a lease agreement, even if the market value is going down around your area, you're still going to be at that higher level that you guys agreed upon. But at least you're in a solid lease agreement
Mhm.
with your landlord. It's a good way of looking at it.
All I know is as a landlord, I cannot afford this rent control. I mean, it's gonna put me out of business. I don't even wanna rent properties anymore if I have it. I think it's gonna decrease the amount of rental property. My property, it's falling apart and I just don't have the money to fix it. You know, these contractors, they charge you an arm and a leg, and 2% over inflation, that's just not enough for all the work I need to do.
And I have to pay $2,000 a month to rent a bunk bed in San Francisco. There's gotta be a happy medium.
I mean, on the
You're
landlord's
not kidding either.
on the landlord's perspective too, though. I mean, you do have fixes in the house, but you also have property taxes. That's a big cost here in California. That can be up to $10,000-$15,000 a year.
Don't even
So-
get me started on the property tax.
Yeah. I'm just.
Now
I
on
mean,
the next ballot, we've got
Yeah.
all these bonds we're trying to approve. If those get passed, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do.
so we can even start talking about the SALT, the new tax law. They can only write off 10,000 of it. But don't get me started on that either.
That's a whole other issue.
Speaking of taxes, what if we used some of the government budget to provide assistance for landlords under the provision that landlords accept rent control. So for landlords that would not benefit from rent control, who are charging an insane amount for a very, very high-end place, they would be able to still charge their market rate. But for landlords that are having more trouble, they would be able to agree to rent control because they are unlikely to spike their prices as heavily, but they would receive a government subsidy making up for essentially the money that they would lose per se agreeing to rent control.
Or low interest loans for improvements maybe instead of subsidies, because then when you got subsidies, what happens is it floods the market with these subsidized like vouchers, housing vouchers like Section 8. It floods the market and increases the rents for everyone because they say, oh, I can get this much money from the government as my base, and then whatever I can charge on top of that. And it has a tendency to drive up rents in the lowest working class neighborhoods. But if they did that same thing and offered low interest rates for improvements, that might be something that would work to get them to agree to, say, 10 years of rent control. Hey,
That's a
run
new-
for office.
That's a new motion.
Yeah, new motion. Sorry.
Second,
There's already a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we can't do that then. Oh, darn, that was a good idea.
How many minutes is that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I just got all lost in the topic. You are at 11 minutes and 23 seconds.
Hey,
Better put to vote.
yeah, motion is put to votes. So who votes for rent control? Let's go around the room.
Bunk beds, no.
Jeannie, do you vote for rent control too?
Kids are not getting
I guess the
it.
rest are landlords. Okay, so we have 2 nays and 8 yays. So the yays,
Wait, yay
That's the
was
other
for, you got it opposite. Yay was for, I said, the motion was for rent control.
okay, you're
2
right,
yays and 8.
nays.
Well, you
Alright.
didn't ask for the nay vote. There could be abstentions.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
okay,
What?
point.
abstention, is that what you said?
Yeah.
You abstain?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Anybody else abstain?
No, I don't abstain, but somebody else might.
Oh, we
So
have
you
2
you have to ask
abstain.
for every vote.
Okay.
Mr.
All right,
Zlock
so
did.
Rita says yes. Sarah says yes.
Yes.
William,
I'm against. Nay.
nay.
abstain.
Abstain, Ryan.
Nay.
Patty? Nay. Marissa?
Nay.
Nay.
Abstain.
Jeannie, abstain. Monica?
Nay.
Nay. We have 2 yays. 2 yays, 4 nays, and 2 abstain.
Damn.
All right, so motion did not pass. All right, thank you, everybody. That's all for our state government for now.